foreign language, different combinations, and the student doesn't really, I don't really think that English is foreign whatever. They don't really realize it for some. It's my fault.
When you mean, and thank you for your contribution, when you mean exposure to the language, what do you mean by exposure? Hmm.
Male, we use but local language then yeah mother tongue rather than using English. Very little English words and English yeah maybe program maybe you will so on that our students can you know can be exposed to as well. They will really think or society or they think English or like that.
Yeah. City of Glasgow College has also been involved in the Skills for Prosperity project with the ILO, and that's actually looking at industry and then strengthening links with industry. And perhaps if there were stronger links with industry and student placements within industry, the students would understand better the importance of using English because they may see it being used in industry in Batam. At the moment, industry links is something that we're focusing on, but for the practical point of view at the moment, there aren't that many student placements, so they don't see the real value of English language. I would appreciate that. Language is about communication, and the first form of communication that we all use is our mouth, yeah? Speaking. If I go to I could go to the supermarket and I could put up a big sign, where is the cheese, please? I could. People would understand me, but that's not really the way that we would have to communicate. And I'm sure you're probably aware that your students can probably write a lot better than they can speak. So they have the process in here, they have the language in here, and it's about practice and confidence about learning the language. So we need to try to encourage them to speak at all times, yes? Okay, back in 2004, the competency-based curriculum stipulated 2 35-minute classes per week would be taught in skate schools. Very, very, very little indeed. For learning a language, maybe you can do colours and numbers in 2 35-minute sessions a week, but you can't do an awful lot more. The law clarified the place of English in education, but there was no curriculum or teaching materials to assist in its implementation. So instead, schools were expected to develop these locally. What does that mean? So you had to deliver your 2 35-minute sessions. You weren't advised on textbooks. You weren't trained on resources. And even the teachers themselves didn't have to have a minimum English language level to teach. Yeah? So it was enforced, it was law, but there was no structure put in behind, there was no support. And today, the status and quality of teaching English has been and remains mixed. So you still don't have official guidelines on how to teach English, an official curriculum on what you should be teaching. And one of the things that I'm going to try to explain today is that none of you are English teachers. None of you are teaching English. You're teaching a subject in a language, yeah? But you're not teaching English. I can teach English, but I can also do other things as well, yeah? But none of you, we're not expecting any of you to be English teachers. Okay. Oh, this doesn't look as if it's saved from last night. I changed the order of this one. Okay, I can come back to that one at the end. So EMI is seen to give students double benefits. They study their subject and they learn the skills of their chosen subject. And at the same time, they gain English language skills as they study. Yeah. 94% of academic research is published in English. International language, bigger audience, more people can access it. So if you're taught in the language of published articles and academic articles, it allows students and teachers to be current in their field and have the possibility of publishing their own research in English. So again, it's about that global competence and being able to compete and access materials and academic research that applies to the students or your own subject. Most EM classrooms, if not all, are bilingual, and teachers do not always trust their resources. So we're a long way away from being fully immersed in EMI. The British Council Innovation Grant, what are we looking to achieve? Principally, to identify the main challenges faced in an EMI classroom, and why we want to maximise the effectiveness in the provision of EMI by minimising the challenges faced. So we want to identify the challenges, and then we want to try to minimise them. Now, this is a long process, yeah? We can start today, we can develop our materials today, we introduce them to the students. It's a new way of study for them. It'll take them time to adapt, it'll take you time to adapt, and there's new skills that you're going to have to learn as well. So this isn't a quick fix, yeah? And as you develop, as your students develop, as the English language develops, everything just progresses and develops and becomes bigger and greater. And you'll have resources that you can fall back on time and time again. Perhaps not the first ones that you produce. Nobody's expecting them to be fantastic the first time round. So I'd like to give our thanks to the people who, well, the polytechnics and organisations who have been involved in the collection of data. We've conducted mixed methodology data collection from surveys, focus group discussions and one-to-one interviews to identify the challenges faced in the EMI classroom. So I'm not going to say all of these because you'll laugh at my pronunciation. But thank you very much for all being involved, and it's nice to see other parties here as well. So the communities of practice that we've set up as well in conjunction with this project obviously involves these polytechnics, but we want it to be the bigger, wider community within Indonesia. We don't want to limit it. And the communities of practice, some of the methodologies I'm going to share here today, then you're going to be developing resources, you're going to be speaking with each other. I tried to do this, for example, for business English. It didn't work. Can anyone help me? Maybe somebody else has produced a resource or a pre-teaching activity, and you can all help and learn from each other. The videos from yesterday and from today on methodologies have been uploaded as well so that you can look at those. But hopefully by being here today and tomorrow, you'll get a bigger insight on how to develop your resources to help English in the classroom. Okay, these are the critical points that we've chosen to display today, and the ones that we're going to work on first. There are other things that we're looking at, but these are the critical points. It's generally recognised by teachers in polytechnics that the standard of English attained and disposable to students and lecturers, so both students and lecturers, is not of a sufficient level or standard to support EMI delivery. So simplified into English, not every lecturer has a able level of English to explain and teach in English, and generally the students have quite low levels of English language, so it's very difficult to deliver something and allow them to understand it. Additional language training is required for students and for teachers. This is something that's a longer term project and something that we're also looking into. Some form of certification and language levelling needs to be set and obtained. So the theory is that teachers need to reach a certain certification level in English to teach EMI effectively in the classroom. And students, before being accepted onto a course, need to achieve a minimum determined level by your polytechnic or perhaps by ministry, a minimum level of English language. And that can be done through certification of various forms. Certification can come from Glasgow City of College, it can come from TOEIC, it can come from IELTS. That would depend on your own organisation and which way you decided to move forward. So students need to have a minimum language level to access EMI, and teachers need to have a minimum level to teach on EMI. The consensus suggests that all international and bilingual courses should have some form of pre-entry English level tests for students to meet language level requirements before embarking on study. We're also looking at the possibility, if students don't reach minimum required levels, that there might be intensive English courses of perhaps 6 weeks of study that they can do before they embark on the course. And if they reach the required level in the 6 weeks intensive course of study, then they can move into the EMI course. And it was agreed that a standardisation of resources would be favourable to both the student and the teacher. In the Skills for Prosperity project, we've standardised and we've looked at curriculums, we've updated curriculums to make sure that industry needs are met through the curriculum and that there's a correct practical and theoretical content in POLIBATAM. The standardisation of resources is subject driven. I'm not going to pretend that I can, because I can't develop and deliver a lesson for supply chain management. I can't. I probably could deliver business, accountancy. I'm not very good with numbers. So I'm not going to pretend that I can stand here and prepare lessons for every subject. What we're going to do is we're going to prepare the language for every subject. And that's something, even if you were delivering in Bahasa or perhaps another language, that's something you do anyway. Because in academic study, you're introducing new terms, new terminology, and new vocabulary. The only difference is you're not doing it in your native language, you're doing it in another language. But some terms and terminologies are not translatable. So we need to use the language anyway. It's like me going to the car mechanic. He tells me what it is, and then I think, how much is that going to cost me? But I don't remember what it's called. I don't remember the piece. Yeah. So it's about communicating the terms that they need to be actively familiar with. We don't need to translate the terms. How can we get the students to understand what a term means in English without translation? How can we do that?
By describing it.
By describing it, yeah. Sorry? Yes, also excellent. The context, yes, so the language and context. The one thing we need to be very careful is that all the language and context is at the correct language level for the students. Yeah. So do you agree with the findings? So do you think that this is correct for where you work and the challenges that you face? That perhaps some of the lecturers don't have a high enough level of English, perhaps the students don't have a high enough level of English. There are no pre-entry requirements for the students, so you've got really low level learners, and perhaps the resources, you maybe don't really know why, but they're just not quite right, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. If any, yeah, we will have um what I was saying before. So some teacher become teacher because of the destiny.
Yeah.
Then the family could not thought that that and then they reach or they met the minimum requirement to be teacher.
Yes. Yes.
That's what you say is they raising from like university then there's one report and
Yes. So you will find in Scotland, in France, in Spain, in Indonesia, in Australia, you always have some teachers who just meet the minimum requirements. You always have some teachers who are not passionate about what they do. You'll get some teachers who are not dedicated. They don't believe in what they're doing. Do you believe that these teachers teach on EMI?